Hi, I'm Mike Buzzelli, and recently I was joined by a very talented group of comedy writers and performers to discuss the process of writing for stage, screen, and publication. The event was moderated by Brian Edward of Berg Vivant, and the panel included Gab Bonesso and Krish Mohan, stand-up comedians, Heidi Nagle, a sketch comedian, and James FitzGerald, a local actor. This fun event was hosted by the 3rd Street Gallery, and we raised money for the Boys and Girls Club of Carnegie. Here's an episode from our panel.
I think comedy is, to kind of go back to what Gab was saying, is I have made a career out of sleeping in my car. And on other people, I really have. I pay my bills with it. There are some nights where I'm sleeping in my car, some nights where I'm sleeping in a shack motel, you know, where it's like, okay.
No, you stayed at you did. You stayed where I stayed. Because I was like, name one human that stayed there, and you went your friend Krish. I went,
yeah.
Take it back.
And it's not a great hotel. The bed is fine. It's weird, but there are several drug deals happening. Oh, and that's part of it. And here's why I'm okay with it, right? Here's why I'm okay with it. Because I believe that stand-up comedy specifically, and to some respects too, comedic theater, because it's not given the same respect as something dramatic. But that's because these are art forms specifically meant for working class people. It's not meant for the elites, because we question the elites. We question human emotion, and we question social behaviors. And we question societal norms, and we make society face those norms. But we do it through humor, so it's okay to face it. So psychologically, what we're doing is making you okay with and accepting that this is the norm, but it doesn't have to be. That's what laughter is. Laughter is creating that tension of this is what it is, but then the laughter is, but it doesn't have to be. It's the absurdism of humanity, and I think that because it's considered a low art form by people that consider drama and opera and things like that as high art form, I think it elevates comedy to the stature where most working class people and most lower class people can enjoy it. It is the only art form that is specifically built for them.
I just want to go back. I didn't say the art of comedy doesn't have dignity. I'm saying as a comedian, I think you're treated without dignity. And that props to you that you can sleep in your car. I have severe manic depression. I have anxiety, OCD, PTSD, and I'm a hypersensitive person, which for years they were trying to test to see if I was on the autism spectrum. Just for the record, I don't have the luxury of not getting sleep. I went through, like, this whole weekend caused me 4 days of a manic lunacy, like I was hallucinating, like it's bad. So I mean, I'm a snowflake, what am I gonna tell you? So for me, no, you need to tell me if it's a hotel or a hostel. I'm a human being, and I'm not gonna come there and not sleep, because I'm giving you 110% of my soul on your stage, and if you're gonna say it's a hotel and it's a hostel, that's not cool, man. And he felt really badly, and yeah, I mean, I did work in corporate comedy where they hooked me up. I used to have like the best hotels, but even with my children's program, schools respect you. I mean, you're bringing me to New York or Mexico. I am not sleeping in my car, man. You know what I mean? And they're giving me hotels without bed bugs. So I'm just saying I want that as a human being who is giving you my soul. And I would also argue, I do agree that we appeal to working class people. But I mean, who are we kidding? The root of our origin is the royalty. We are the court jester. We are the fool. We are the ones to make the 1% go, oh, wait a minute. I didn't realize manic depression meant this is your story, you know what I mean? Like that. We were all talking earlier. Like, do you think you've had a successful show if you get a laugh or if people listen? For me, it's when one human being is like, "Oh my God, thank you for telling my truth on stage." When I work with little kids and they're like, "Gabby, thank you. I don't feel alone anymore." Even if it's one person, man, that's what it is for me. It's just because I've always felt alone, even within my family. So if I can make another person be like, "My tribe," I'm good. But that's just me.
I played an AA event once, and I know. Well, yeah. There are like 300 people in this room. I can't tell you any of their names. But anyway, a guy came at me after the show and said, "I've been 3 days sober. I really needed this." That, to me, is a success as a comedian. Because, like what Gab said, I really connected with people. And I would agree with Krish about lowbrow, because I played a country club, and yeah, those people had no idea what the hell I was talking about. I was the only Democrat in the room.
Well, one thing that I'm hearing in common with the group when you speak of how you got started in comedy and what constitutes success in your field, I'm hearing that it's very personal. The type of comedy that each of you create is very personal, and to some degree comes as a result of you being very true to who you are. You know, it's not trying to be somebody else. Like Gab, you're not out there trying to be Richard Pryor.
No.
You've got your own brand of comedy, and it comes from your life experience, who you are, and a lot of your challenges in life. And Heidi, I know that you, for example, as we read in your bio, one of the shows that you did was based on your life. And I don't know if you'd call it a sketch comedy or, you know, maybe a one-woman show, but that was all about you. So to what degree do you feel that was a success?
It was, I think, well received. I had a lot of people who would like contact me after the fact and be like, I just saw this thing, it reminded me of that sketch you did, and I was like, yes.
But it was also a way for me to talk about myself and things that were maybe more serious in a very lighthearted way. Like, you know, I'm middle-aged and I don't have children, which is like mind-boggling to some people. And so I did a sketch about why I don't have children and why I will never have children. And it was kind of great to have people come up to me afterwards and say like, yeah, like I feel the same way. And that is really refreshing to hear somebody else say it in such a lighthearted way and not have to be such a like, oh, this is my blah, blah, blah.
Well, one of the things that I always hear about comedy is comedy's funny because it's true. A joke is funny because in some way, shape, or form, it's telling a truth. Thoughts on that?
Well, I have one real quick one. I was in this comedy class, as you know, and a friend of mine was performing, and he was telling he was standing up in front of our class telling like stale jokes that didn't really apply to him, okay? And the teacher stopped him and said, look, and he was limping around stage the whole time, limping around stage. And the teacher stopped him and said, look, you're walking around with this limp the whole time. What's with the limp? And he goes, oh, my girlfriend ran me over. It's like the funniest thing. It's the funniest thing he said. And it was like, you know, it's like, because he was like, I went out to get the newspaper and I bent over, she was backing out of the driveway, she didn't see me. I'm like, oh my God. So, like, the truth was much funnier than the canned humor he found online somewhere. Like, you know, like just telling his story. And, you know, when somebody's up on stage limping, you're drawn to the limp. You got to address it right away, you know, so.
The truth hurts sometimes.
And the truth hurts, yes.
So you know, and Krish, I know a lot of your comedy comes from, you know, social issues and cultural identities and things. So how do you talk about very difficult things, very controversial, sensitive things in a humorous way? Is there an art to that? Or you just go in like a China shop bull and bulldoze the hell out of it?
I've tried doing that.
How'd that
and
go?
It doesn't work. I've spent the last probably 8 or 9 years trying to figure that out, and each show that I do gets a little bit better and a little bit easier to relay that message. It's to set up and punch, right? But I've never found the traditional way of doing that. But like we talked about, comedy is setting up tension and then breaking it. Setting up the tension is the truth that the world is broken. And it has been broken for an incredibly long time. Our history is flawed, it's violent, it's ridiculous, and humanity does some really dumb things. We take pride in that. Like, that's what we do, right? That's the absurdism of it. Our own history and our own behavior is the truth, and it is possibly one of the most absurd things that I have found about us. That's the commonality that we have. The break in that, breaking that tension, is making people realize that that is not how it needs to be. How do we do that is by either looking at the way that we've already enacted solutions that we haven't really paid attention to, or it's looking into just little moments that I've seen about our own humanity breaking these patterns. and telling the story beyond that. So a lot of it has veered into the storytelling format, where there's a beginning, middle, and end, and then a moral behind it, because I think that's important. These stories end up becoming important. So setting up the tension is, okay, this is the truth of where we're living at, the truth is absurd, here's how absurd it is, and then breaking that tension with, here's something that shows you that this doesn't need to be the truth.
So which comes first? Do you set out to tell a truth or to tell a joke?
I think they're almost equal at this point, because the truth is the joke.
It's like cyclical. It's
Yeah.
the snake eating its
Yeah.
own tail.
Ouroboros.
There you go.
Yeah.
We're getting deep here. Hold on to your
Yeah.
hats.
Wow, that's kind of like
But you know, as broad as comedy is, it seems like there is an extremely fine line between funny and offensive and poor taste. So,
We know those guys too, we didn't invite them.
But in this very broad spectrum of comedy, what are the boundaries? Are there boundaries, and how do you navigate that line? I throw this out to the group.
Hashtag be funny. If you're gonna be offensive, it better be goddamn funny. If you're gonna do something that triggers 90% of your audience, they better at least laugh at the thing that's triggering them. But I just find so much of people like they still think that edgy 90s Seinfeld being mean style of comedy is cool, and it's so passe. Like if you still think that's the way to be funny, okay, good luck. Louis C.K., he's doing really well right now, isn't he? Okay, good luck with that. Yeah, no, that's just my opinion.
Well, the time, it's changed so much. I mean, society changes, it evolves. When you listen to Henny Youngman, rattle off 70 jokes in about 30 seconds. Or Rodney Dangerfield. That style from the 50s, even from the early vaudeville days, from burlesque, the house comedian.
Take my wife,
Please.
Yeah, exactly.
Rodney Dangerfield could get away with a joke. My doctor, Biddy Van Boom, whatever his doctor's name. He gets things backwards. I walked into him the other day, he gently squeezed my knees and told me to cough and hit me in the balls with a hammer. And then the next joke. But you don't see comedians telling jokes anymore. The joke has kind of moved on, unless you're a bartender, where you have to know jokes. Then it became observational humor.
Maybe it's because all the jokes have been told. Like we've told them all. There's no more.
And then it became observational humor. Isn't it funny when? Did you ever notice? The Andy Rooney style.
Yeah.
And then it became something else again, the sitcom. Like Seinfeld's a great example. And there are theatrical ways you can be funny. Kramer's entrance. Every time, do you remember the show? Every time he entered a room, he had that quirky energy. But it was consistent. Every entrance he ever made, he did the same thing. And it just kept getting funnier. That's a great stage rule. You can be quirky, but you have to be consistent. It's the Bugs Bunny example. If you're in Bugs Bunny world, you can't break it.
Yeah.
You have to stay consistent. The energy is always up here. If you put a black circle, it becomes a hole. So once you create the world, you have to be consistent with that world. Then the audience will go with you. So they'll recognize certain things.
How important is relatability then? Because, as you said, things have changed and evolved, and now it's a lot of observational humor, which I would think to be funny, your audience has to relate to that and say, oh yeah, airplane food does suck.
Yeah.
So, how important is relatability?
But I think in a good play, with good writing, it is recognizing your own humanity. Even if the character's from left field, you recognize, if it's done well, you recognize your own humanity with what you're seeing. And some of that is tragic, some of it's funny, some of it's observational.
Well,
All plays are based on human behavior, and that covers a myriad of emotions and actions and opinions, And that's what you strive for.
I think it's a good time to talk about storytelling.
Yes.
Because I feel like storytelling is sort of where comedy's heading now anyway. And it's a much more relaxed audience. You don't have the 2-drink minimums.
Yeah.
And you just go in and people tell a story from a beginning, middle, end, but the humor is weaved through because it's true.
It's long form. You can kind of, set up your stakes, and then you have your climax, and yeah, and some stories are, ultimately sad, but like we were talking about earlier, they're more relatable when there's some funny elements in them, for sure.
Yeah, I think art moves before people. Art changes before people do. And I think that's always been the case. So I think the observational humor that you're talking about is still pretty prevalent in comedy today, especially in stand-up. That's what people want to see when they go into certain spaces, right? When you go to a comedy club, nobody's looking to be challenged. It's why I don't get booked at comedy clubs, because I go in there to challenge them. I'm not here to sell chicken tenders. I'm here to challenge society through comedy to help people start a conversation and feel better about the fact that the world is broken. But storytelling is something that I've fallen into. It feels natural to me, but this long-form idea of comedy and this long-form idea of just discourse in general has been going on for a long time. One of the most popular podcasts right now that gets millions of views is the Joe Rogan podcast. Whatever you think of Joe Rogan doesn't matter in the context that he gives people the opportunity to speak for 2 to 5 hours. And he just lets them spill it all out. Whatever their viewpoints are, whether you agree with them or not, doesn't matter in this context. It's the fact that you get the full breadth of what this person believes and who he is, or who that person is, right? That has become immensely popular, and right now is when we're seeing the advent of that being accepted into mainstream society. Art moves before people do.
Storytelling's been with us forever. I mean, around campfires, basically, the Iliad and the Odyssey were stories that told, somebody finally wrote them down. Storytelling's always going to be with us. So it's not a new form, but it's being popularized again, I feel. They're finding venues now where it's become more popular.
And universal to a degree. Now, I'd say the reverse thought of that is know your audience. So to what degree is know your audience true? And how do you each manage that?
Don't play country club.
Especially if that audience is completely divergent from your own style of comedy.
So, as you mentioned, the Harvey Wallbangers have been asked not once, but twice to perform at this thing called Techo. And I don't know if anybody knows what Techo is, but it's the anime convention. So we are not anime experts by any means, and we keep getting asked to come back and perform, and it's very strange because there's a Pikachu sitting in the front row, and we're doing
I want to play there.
and they're dead silent, like couple chuckles here or there, and because they're in their character and it's fine. And so it's a very weird feeling to be performing in front of a group that you think, this is not my audience, but they love it. Like, they still love it, and we still have a place there.
Yeah, I've played for the furries, okay? So everyone in masks. I actually have a blog based on it. It's called Furries Bully Me. furrieshhateme.blogspot.com. No, seriously, I got hate mail from furries. Like, I want to get into that one. But I played for AARP meetings. I played for country clubs. I just did a comedy thing in wild and wonderful West Virginia. I think the thing is, if you have enough material and you are always true to yourself, you can figure out a way. Do you have to read the room, man? I mean, our job is to make you laugh at the end of the day. If I'm calling myself a comedian and you're coming to a comedy show, I want you to smile, even if it means I'm coming out and tickling you. I will give you permission. Consensual tickling, guys. But, you make it work, I mean, I play for kids, and with them, I always say, you can't have art without a fart. So the point is, you make it work, and that's just my point, so.
So you do adjust yourself for the audience, but within your style.
Exactly. So in West Virginia, I was like, all right, let me just see. I'll do one Trump joke and let's see where it lands. And it didn't land great, okay? It didn't land great. And so I was like, I'm not saying I'm not for Trump. I'm just saying I vote for whoever you guys vote for. You know what your favorite color is? That's my favorite color. Your favorite TV show? My favorite TV show. I'm just tap dancing. You know what I mean? And then I would just segue into, did I mention I'm a manic depressive? And then I go into mental health. You know, and like that's something they can relate to in West Virginia, right? There's an opioid crisis. They're nuts. They're wild. You know what I mean? So it's like you just channel what they need to hear in that moment. And I don't kind of piss them off by telling them I'm not a Trump fan because I want them to hear some other shit I have to say that's important. You know what I mean?
Jim, you had a-
This is my favorite know your audience story. So this friend of mine and I, we were not being hired, so we wrote our own material. And it was based on a vaudeville show. So it did really well in Chicago. We got hired to Milwaukee Rep and Dudley Riggs in Minneapolis, which is a long-standing comedy improv thing. So we wrote, as part of this act, we wrote a 10-minute musical based on Psycho, the movie, which slayed. In Chicago, it slayed. We thought it was our best stuff. So we're doing our show, it's going well. In Minneapolis, it was okay, this is gonna kill it. This is gonna slay. We do it, and it's crickets. Absolute crickets. And you know. The only sound is the rolling of your own eyeballs. So we go off stage, and Will is furious. He's like, what the hell is going on? And he marches back out on stage and did the one thing you never do to an audience is yell at them.
Oh no!
But he came out, and I was so mortified. He walks out, no, what was wrong with that? That was great stuff. What was wrong with that? You did none of you ever seen Psycho? Who's never seen Psycho? No one in the audience had seen the movie. So they had no clue what we were talking about and being silly about. They hadn't a clue. So we had to cut it. It was our best stuff, and we just had to cut it because we couldn't. Who's never seen Psycho?
I used to do
So that's knowing your audience. You know, it's not
I
gonna
used
work.
to do a Flintstones joke. And the 20-year-olds now, the movie with Dan Goodman's even 20 years old.
Yeah.
Like the kids don't know who the Flintstones are now. And I was like,
You can't make a rotary
you
phone.
guys know who the Flintstones are? See? I rest my case.
Well, now is the part of our program where we will take a brief pause and have a good cry.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Carnegie Screenwriters Fade In, our special series, The Art of Comedy, a panel discussion. I'm Mike Buzzelli, and we'll see you for the next episode.